So that's exactly what StretchLab did. They said, what can we pluck out of physical therapy that individuals are willing to pay for, that potentially insurance is not covering, that has the highest perceived value to the patient? Now, I've got to share this quickly. I was sitting at my son's cross country parent meeting yesterday, and, I have great gratitude to all of the coaches, all of the volunteers, everything they put into it. But I did have to bite my tongue when the coach was saying, we stretch before we run, we stretch after we run. And I tell the students to even try and get stretching during the day. I thought my son was going to knock me out because it came out and I didn't want it to come out. Now, I tend to not be a huge advocate of stretching unless there's a real reason. We're stretching a contracture, we're stretching a targeted tissue because there was some sort of direct injury to that tissue. General stretching for general perceived performance improvement makes no sense to me. But anyway, it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter what I think of it. I have patients in my clinic today that go to StretchLab. They don't want to pay for physical therapy, but they will pay for StretchLab to get a 55-minute stretch. I had the owner of 3 StretchLab locations who came to me for therapy. And of course, I got a chance to pick her brains a little bit. But yeah, they just plucked out what is something that the population perceives as valuable. What are they willing to pay for? Let's do more of that. And it's been raging success.
There are stories of this everywhere. Like, I think the story of you guys know the app Slack, right? The messaging and file sharing app. You don't know Slack, Tony? Really?
With a slap with a P or Slack?
Slack, S-L-A-C-K.
Yeah, I know that.
So it's an app, file sharing, DMing, and everything like that. That's not what it was intended to do, though, at first. This is like serendipity. But they put something in front of people and watched which parts they, poked around and liked using. And then they, instead of saying, you're using the tool wrong, you're doing it wrong, they said, oh, well, we put this thing in front of you thinking you'd use it this way. Turns out people actually use it this way. The story of TheraBand. Do you know the background of TheraBand? It was a dental dam. That's what the material was. And then some PTs got their hands on it. I was like, well, this is stretching in this direction, and I can do this, and I can do this. And then you go the progression of dental dam to TheraBand to someone like Scott Dickinson, who looks at TheraBand and goes, but it's doing it wrong. And he creates Next Level. And we'll have an episode with Scott coming out. But it's like they paid attention to the thing everybody liked, not what you like, because you're not buying your service, you're providing it. And so what they saw was, well, people like that feeling of stretch. So they said, we're going to offer it to you. We're going to make that a seamless, frictionless process. So I thought we'd do like a dive, a shallow dive. We're going to dive in the shallow end. We're going to dive in the 3-foot end. StretchLab, boutique fitness franchise, I've got it on the screen, specializes in assisted stretching services. I can already hear the PTs of the world rolling their eyes. Well, that's not this, and that's not, best practice. Founded in 2015 by 2 fitness industry people who paid attention to something. And the idea is you go into these boutiques and someone, just like they're on the screen, this is similar to a massage, right? Is there, how much evidence is the value of a massage? But I'll tell you why I get a massage, because I like the way it feels. I like how I feel when I walk out of there. And is it worth 60 or 90 bucks? The answer is yes. So now you can start your own StretchLab franchise. I mean, people can be angry about it because of their own emotion. They're projecting. That's not good. And they're wagging their finger. But they're giving people what they want in a way they want. Where's the problem? Someone explain it to me.
Dave, what's your perspective?
So, I mean, I've had initially, when this first came out years ago, I had a little negative sentiment because they were calling their people the actual, not even personal train, they're not calling them personal trainers. They call them stretchologists, flexologists, or posturologists, which is basically, I mean, it sounds like proctologists. I mean, they're just making up words. I mean, it's just crazy. But yes, or just like mixologists, exactly. So shaking drinks in a bar. The model's good because the labor is low, and that's why the price point's low and the labor is low. So it works out. They're going to be a little bit more volume based than probably a lot of physical therapy offices. I have, by the way, my observation is I've seen 1 or 2 of these close already. There was one in Brooklyn. They're all kind of the same. It's a different brand name, StretchLab. There's a million different stretch names. I think at the end of the day, physical therapists and practice owners can do a couple things, couple options. One is do nothing, like just continue to see them pop up and do that. They're going to continue to maybe expand. And there's other ones here in New York City called Stretched. And I can't remember there's other ones out there. So you could do nothing. You could add it as a service in your practice, which is what we've done. So on my website, we have, whatever I call it.
What do you call it?
I think I have it as fascial stretch therapy, which I know PTs hate, but that's what the consumer is searching. And
That's the word that they're looking for.
I'm Google based, baby. I know the Google queries, so I'm using the consumer's line. You know why? Because those consumers pay us, and the PTs out there don't pay us. So my patients and clients pay our bills. So we use those search queries that those consumers are going to potentially find us through. So you can add it, or really quick, if I could share my screen for 2 seconds.
Yeah.
There's a practice owner in Delaware. This is Stephen Rapicelli. He's a PT. He's been in practice for decades. Since 1992, he's had performance physical therapy down in Delaware. He's got multiple locations. And he's also the CEO of StretchPlex from 3 years ago. So let me jump over. Can you guys now see their website, StretchPlex?
No, I still see LinkedIn.
All right, hold on. Let me share this tab instead.
While you're doing that, I want to say, as long as you are not making claims that you are selling something or doing something that just doesn't actually do. I don't want people to think these guys are advocating to sell snake oil. As long as you are open and honest about what you're providing, you cannot throw an ethical argument at me that holds water.
Right. So do you see this now?
Yep.
StretchPlexNow.com. So they have 4 locations. I think he's got 3 or 4 PT practices. And now he's got this is a separate brick and mortar business, separate locations, separate branding. Now, I think it's absolutely genius. I've heard Stephen on, I think, Chad Madden's podcast and a couple other podcasts. I'm assuming, I don't know if they do this, but they should, which is referring the patients and clients to and from each service, right? So the consumer who only wants the StretchPlex, and then when the patient has too much pain or too much issues, or they have they need some differential diagnosis figured out, whatever, or they ask hey, should I see a doctor about this, or a therapist? What should I do? Or should I see a chiropractor or whatever? The stretchologist or whatever at StretchPlex should say, oh, you know what? We have a partnership, or we have whatever with performance physical therapy down the street. Why don't I connect you? Or here's a referral, or here's a business card, or how about we get you in there, we try to fit you in there, whatever, and do a little cross promotion, cross referral between the two businesses. There are 2 different businesses, 2 different brick and mortar offices. So at the end of the day, I think physical therapists and practice owners do nothing, add it to your current practice as one of your services, or like Stephen, completely different business, probably a different LLC entity, different brick and mortar location, and refer patients and clients between those 2. So what are the pros and cons of that? Go ahead.
There's a 4th option though, Dave, which is you could bitch about it on Facebook.
Right.
That is a viable option. What are the options? Look, me 5 years ago, especially me in PT school, I would have raged against this, right? I would have looked at this like, this isn't this and this and this. Then look at it for what it is. They're being very clear, open, and honest of what it is. And this is another adult making a decision with their own monies, and they're giving monies to people to do a thing. And when they leave, they're either happy about it or they're not happy about it, right? You did mention a couple of those closing. That doesn't mean the thing that they're providing isn't good. That could have been a crappy business owner or a bad market or any of those things.
True.
Tony, what do you think?
I love it. I think it's awesome. I think any of these things that come out, I think we can learn lessons from. Dave and I think we even looked at some of these on Biz Buy Sell one time, looking at that as a business model. If we went in as a therapist, bought a StretchLab location, and then brought physical therapy into it, made billable services out of it. I mean, you just took something to the next level because you opened the doors of insurance reimbursement. So there are so many ways that we could leverage what's already proven successful. I think that that's a mistake that we make as therapists, is we're like, well, we're therapists, we do therapy. But let's look at the market. Where's the money flowing? What can we do on top of that to add value to that? And then how can we bring that into organizations? And we see so many people that are saying, I am buying businesses, I'm building a little portfolio. Heck, this is Dave's world. So that, you know, I don't have to be the one literally stretching every hamstring, massaging every neck.
Now, here's the thing to go back to the PT degree versus cost versus ROI. And this was in a similar thread that I think Dave was getting hammered on in a Facebook group that I keep poking the bear on, which is someone pointed out that calling yourself a DPT if you don't have a doctor of physical therapy is against, and they used an example of the state of Indiana Physical Therapy Practice Act. Now, Tony, quick review. Who does the State Physical Therapy Practice Act, who does that govern?
Physical therapists.
Who does it not govern? Everybody who isn't a physical therapist. So someone is just a little bit skewed. And again, correct me if I'm wrong in the comments, but your Physical Therapy Practice Act or your occupational state occupational therapy practice act doesn't mean anything to me because I'm not an OT. So keep that in mind. It governs this, right? So you can be mad at stretchologists or posturologists or fasciologists all you want. They're not in your arena. This is where it's almost like your DPT handcuffs you if you keep trying to do DPT things, right? So that's why when someone says, what do you do? I'm a physical therapist. I'm going to say, that's your degree. That ain't what you do. Ask a smart real estate agent what they do. And they say, I help people find their dream homes every day. How do I do that? I have a real estate practice. It might seem like Jimmy's trying to be a marketing guy and change a headline, but that's a different thing because one makes me ask you a question about how you could do that. So what do you think? Like a stretchologist might say, I help people feel better and feel refreshed. I help you move better throughout the day. How do you do that? Oh, I have this thing called StretchLab. You come in and for 50 minutes, I do some things. Stop telling people about the tools that you use or your degree. Start telling them about the outcome. That's what StretchLab does. They show you the outcome, right? So you could be mad about it, or you could bitch about it on Facebook, or you could join them and offer them that. Now, this is all your decision too, but you can't complain about it when the market doesn't want to pay for what you're providing.